So that's what I'm saying. The text is like an object. It's gonna change perspective based on where you're standing. I don't know.
Hello?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I missed you, baby sweet. It was a day.
It was a day.
Please tell me you're seeing this too.
From Seattle, we're Drinking the Movies. I'm Taylor Baker.
And I'm Michael Clausen. That's a good beer.
Hellbent 4th anniversary IPA. Pretty
Delicious.
Nice.
I didn't see. Is it the 4th anniversary of the brewing company?
I think it's the 4th anniversary of their IPA because, they did open when I moved in here. I don't know.
Well, we can dig into you. How long have you lived here?
That's a good question. 6 years? 4 years? Somewhere in there.
And it was already here.
No, it was being built when I moved in.
Interesting.
Probably in the fall after I moved in.
Okay.
So
little Hellbent Brewing History Company right here. Yeah. Good stuff.
We have 2 movies that are on my top list now. I don't know about you. Where are you at?
Ad Astra, I believe, was on my top 10. If not,
How about now?
It might as well be. I would think it still is. It's definitely high up there.
What about Ford v Ferrari?
I think we'll see after we have our first impression.
No, Domino's now out. I still haven't seen it. That's the only one that's come out from my top 10. I'm slotting Ford v Ferrari into that.
There you go.
So,
it's filling in the gaps.
Yeah, this is gonna make or break for me. This is a big first impressions.
Big moment.
What are we watching first?
Let's do Ad Astra first.
It's crazy out there. There's fires everywhere and plane crashes. They're calling it the Surge.
Major, we have some highly classified information.
What can you tell us about the Lima project?
Its objective was to search for advanced extraterrestrial life. The ship disappeared approximately 16 years into the mission.
And the commander was?
He was my father, sir.
This might come as quite a shock to you. Your father was experimenting with a highly classified material that could threaten our entire solar system.
All right. We just watched the trailer for the much-anticipated Ad Astra, directed by James Gray. Thoughts?
Fuck yeah.
Pretty pumped?
Yes, sir.
Just cements its place on the list of most anticipated?
Absolutely. Yep.
No concerns.
It's, no concerns at all. Nope.
Yeah.
I'm riding high off of A Remembrance of Earth's Past, which is a science fiction trilogy that I just completed, and this is right up my subconscious alley at the moment. I would like to watch some complex philosophy in space with that nice family dynamic.
Yeah.
And Tommy Lee Jones acting? Fuck yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen Tommy Lee Jones in a little while, personally. Very intrigued by the cast. I didn't realize beforehand that Ruth Negga was in this. I don't think I've seen her since Loving. I loved Ruth Negga in Loving.
Well, she's in a TV show called Preacher.
Oh, okay. I didn't know who
from Rogen, Seth Rogen, and his collaborator. Jeez, I can't remember his name right now, but they collaborate on everything together.
Goldberg.
Yeah, Evan Goldberg. Thank you. Yeah. So that's
got it.
What she's doing.
Yeah.
She's working 36 episodes, I think.
She stayed busy. Brad Pitt clearly having a big year between this and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I've never just wholeheartedly adored Brad Pitt, but I am just very intrigued by
who's your favorite modern movie star?
Modern movie star?
Yeah.
Jake Gyllenhaal.
Interesting. I wouldn't put him as a modern movie star, but I think
you're right.
He is like my favorite actor. But I mean movie star. DiCaprio, Pitt, Cruise.
Cruise would be up there, no doubt.
Yeah. There's not many more than that now. That
I know.
Dead,
It's the pool is kind of small.
It is in this modern day.
Yeah. You're right. Gyllenhaal's almost gone a little smaller with some of his.
He's very much like the best version of Robert Pattinson. He's the light timeline version of Robert Pattinson.
Yeah.
Now that you're watching Community.
Yeah, exactly. Good connection. Yeah. I'm psyched. I just have to think it'll be a little weirder than the trailer lets on. Like, I think it's a very commercially promising trailer, knowing, like, James Gray, I think we know that he might have something a little more, like, thoughtful.
Oh, yeah. I already have my suspicions based on the trailer of what exactly the import is of that composite material or atomic material that Tommy Lee Jones is experimenting with. And the fact that it could eliminate our solar system also has the potential to eliminate other solar systems and therefore make us viable in an intergalactic arms race, which keeps our solar system from being decimated, perhaps, which is a bigger philosophical debate that I find very interesting currently.
And very high stakes.
Yes.
So, yeah, lots of promising stuff.
Liv Tyler, awesome.
Yeah. I'm pumped.
Yep.
Well, we shall see.
Coming to the podcast in September.
There you go. Next up, we have our first impression of Ford versus Ferrari.
You're going to build a car to beat Ferrari with a Ford.
Correct.
And how long did you tell them that you needed? 200-300 years?
90 days.
This isn't the first time Ford Motors has gone to war. We know how to do more than push paper. Go ahead, Carol. Go to war.
Thank you, sir.
All right, we just watched the trailer for Ford versus Ferrari. I would think that with James Mangold as director, Christian Bale as one of its stars, those are two primary ingredients for a movie Taylor really likes.
You're missing out on the main third ingredient.
And that is?
Tracy Letts.
Great call. I do
as
like
Henry
Letts.
Ford II. And one of the greatest living screenwriters.
There you go.
And playwrights.
Promising stuff.
Very, very promising. What do you think?
I'm pretty pumped about it. I mean, if there was anything working against it for me, it's just that, like, as
It's
subject
a biopic.
matter, biopic, and also just cars in general, like, that's just not, like, the kind of material I ordinarily gravitate to. But, you know, with the right cast, the right narrative, it can still do a lot for me. What about you?
I also could not give less of a shit about cars if they get me from point A to point B.
Yeah.
Washing a car is almost like, why would you need to do that to me?
Yeah. I'm the same way.
We should not care about cars in the superficial way that we do. The way that, like, about 4 years ago, everyone was buying the new iPhone. Like, it seems like that part of car culture, like, it's just never going to be who I am. So a movie about it is kind of always going to keep me at arm's length unless it does some other stuff. And it seems to me like going to war against an institution with a high budget and like all it made all the right noises for me to be interested. I want to see Matt Damon give a nuanced performance. I want to see Christian Bale give a performance skinny. I want to see Tracy Letts be Tracy Letts. It's just all things that I love, plus James Mangold. So it could be top 10. I have a feeling it's going to be more in my top 15. I feel it probably landing in 14 unless the end of the year is really, really strong. But I can't see it beating out some of the stuff I have between 1 and 5 right now. So and then it's going to get really stacked at the end of the year. So.
Yeah. Kind of thinking about these two back to back plus The Irishman with like Robert De Niro. I remember thinking last year that it was a particularly strong year for actresses, and I was having a little bit of trouble towards the end of the year finding like a bunch of favorite male performances. I do think it's going to be a pretty strong year between like these handful of movies. Like these look like some pretty promising lead male performances.
Yes,
which is good.
And what's interesting is I don't know that I could say the same thing about female performances. Like there might still be that wildlife that we don't quite know about yet,
right? Yeah.
With that great Carey Mulligan performance, but like I can't see something outdoing Michelle Williams' performance as Gwen Verdon in Fosse
That's
him.
number one.
Like, that's just number one for me.
Yeah. Even with
Sophia Boutella is probably like number 3 on that list, you know, and then
great
Julianne Moore is probably number 2 in Gloria Bell.
Yeah. I'm very excited for Little Women, but I think that will be very much an ensemble thing.
Yes.
It'll be hard to, I would think, like
we might be able
really
to grab a
pick
supporting actress from there, but like there is no
Yeah.
the favorite this year where there's going to be 3 girls that we want to put into our top spot.
Not that I know of. But yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, maybe Florence Pugh, Midsommar.
Maybe. Oh yeah. Good call.
Yeah,
I take it back.
It's
Cross my
possible.
fingers for that.
All right, let's get into the features.
Let's do it.
Let's have a drink at Ma's.
Can you buy some booze for my friends and I?
Not interested. Please? Hell. Whoa, there's my girl. This never happened, okay?
Thanks again for doing this, ma'am.
You guys want to party like rock stars? Follow me.
Let's get drunk!
That's right. We're talking about the film Ma, directed by Tate Taylor, I believe.
I think that's right.
Starring Octavia Spencer. There are a few other faces I recognize here, but I couldn't tell you their names.
I almost think that it's like Luke Perry, maybe, is the father. And then
That sounds right.
I think that there was a name that you specifically mentioned in your review of a person that you didn't like the portrayal of. Am I confusing you with someone else's review, or was that you?
That might be someone else.
Okay. So someone was complaining about the depiction of that blonde gal who was an adult.
That was me,
that
actually.
Was you.
That was me, actually. That was the actress is Missy Pyle.
Yes.
I don't think it was the actress's fault, but like that was a detail that I maybe had questions about.
I didn't.
Not so much.
No.
The other just recognizable actress who caught my eye was Juliette Lewis. That's the main girl's mother. Right.
Yes.
I've seen her in a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, Juliette Lewis was in California with Brad Pitt, if I remember correctly.
I think I've seen that.
I've never seen it either. I just know that it's like a famous film that's, for some reason, it's got like maybe half of a cult following, and it's California spelled with a K. And then she's just been part of a lot of projects in that weird point between like 98 to 2006.
Yeah.
Where Hollywood was just kind of doing some weird shit.
Yeah. She popped up.
Back when Troy was profitable.
Yes. Many moons ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
Back when Orlando Bloom was a film star.
Yes, exactly. So we were both pretty excited about this one. I think it's fair to say, right? We did it on first impressions. Maybe not over the moon about it, but
by
we
the
were
time
intrigued.
I got to the theater about it, to see it, I was no longer.
So at what point did you decide that you were not so optimistic?
The Friday after it came out, and I opened the Letterboxd, and I saw the people that I respect and follow review it as poorly as they did.
Right.
I think
Not a good
specifically
sign.
Matt Singer's review cemented it as like a fuck.
Not so good.
Yeah.
Hopes were dashed early.
Yeah, I can tell when Matt uses certain keywords, I'm going to be in line with him. And that was the case on this one.
Yeah.
I think we both landed on the same score, but you gave it the heart, which... Why don't you walk me through that?
Yes, my heart is for one person in particular. I bet you can guess who. That is Octavia Spencer.
Titular character.
That is
who
correct.
the film does not even center around.
Yeah, I think that's
which is
fair
why
to
I
say.
think it's a trash film. Because that main character has no business being our main character.
I think I
Did you
could see
recognize
that.
her also? Because you just recently saw Booksmart.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2 back to back. That young actress is Diana Silvers, who I understand is an Instagram star. That was how she
that makes sense.
Came to prominence. The movie I thought a lot about during Ma was Carrie, Brian De Palma's Carrie, as I thought more
That's
about...
very charitable.
Right. I came to think about this movie as one in sort of the subgenre of the Revenge of the Bullied. And to me, Carrie is sort of the pinnacle of that genre. And in Carrie, because I almost had the same thought...
Not Revenge of the Nerds, huh?
I've never actually seen Revenge of the Nerds. But that movie also came to mind just because of the name.
How about Revenge of the Nerds 4?
Also have not seen it. None of the franchise.
Okay.
Big blind spot, clearly. Okay. But I was thinking about how in Carrie, we do spend a lot of time, or not a lot of time, but we do spend a good amount of time with characters other than Carrie. We spend a lot of time with the bullies who we know are planning this sort of terrible prank on her. So, I think there are ways in which you can maybe sort of divide time between the sort of primary character who is seeking the revenge and the other people who play a role in the story. But I don't think that this one did a particularly good job of really showing me where that little girl who was subjected to such pretty, ridiculously cruel bullying, where that really was in Ma, the older Ma that we now see. There's just not really that transformation that's sort of implied, but doesn't really play out on the screen in any meaningful way.
Point back to what I started with. The screenplay's focal point is the problem. Because Ma is a very interesting character.
Mm-hmm.
The girl who's our main character, we have no business focusing on. That's just who greenlit that version of the screenplay. It just makes no sense to me. Why is this girl who just moved here the central focus of a narrative that is all... To me, it should have been all about the fact that the focus is on Ma, and then the big reveal of, holy shit, she's holding her daughter prisoner in her own house, and kind of doing The Act situation. If you're familiar with that Hulu project, The Act, which is based on the real-life story of some people that I can't remember, but basically, the mother was making the daughter appear to be sick in order to acquire benefits. And so forcing sickness on her, that mother's milk narrative, essentially. And that's more interesting. Show me Ma's story. Show me Ma going to work with, Alice and Janney. Give me more of that. Give me less of this school thing. Give me more of this, back narrative of her being someone in the back of the casino watching this unfold, in the diner watching this scenario unfold, and let me slowly put these pieces together instead of focusing on some shit that doesn't matter. It's probably an 87-minute movie, but it's a lot better screenplay.
Yeah. I would argue that it just sounds like a different kind of screenplay. I think we have to try and run with the decision it made to focus on this character and figure out why that didn't work. Do you think there is a way in which this could have stuck with these?
Well, it's the atypical formula to choose the girl who just moved into the city and we're going to follow her through her journey, right? That was what's the movie we watched with Chloe Grace Moretz?
Greta?
Greta. Yeah, that's essential. It's just let's follow this girl and then have this character who's the name of the film.
Yeah.
And the bigger character that's more interesting be a side character. No. Let's make them the main character. Let's write the hard screenplays. Let's make hard screenplays. I think that's just a horror formula that isn't going away. And I think that I want to see Blumhouse, specifically as a production company, make bigger leaps.
Yeah, I mean, I would watch that movie too, no doubt. The one that hews more closely to Ma. I think this screenplay would have worked fine for me and would have positioned me along with these kids who are the ones really subject to the terror, had it done a better job of really helping me understand how disturbed Ma was, which I think it does in a really kind of expository way, but not in a particularly emotional way. And then would have made me much more fearful for these kids. As is, I feel like there's this kind of big disconnect between the young Ma, where all this need for revenge began, and who the character is that actually is the one carrying it out. Had I maybe gotten a better sense of, right after that prank happened, how truly sort of fucked that is,
very fucked.
Then I could then be brought up to speed and understand just how much trouble these kids are in, because I understand how badly Ma wants to see these bullies punished. But Yeah, I think you said in your review that you're mostly just happy, like, Octavia Spencer got this role.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't agree with you more there.
Right, like, it's a bottom line, just film-wise.
Mm-hmm.
It's a proof of concept film, I think, for Octavia and kind of the industry in relation to Octavia, that if you spend $5 million on her in your first weekend with correct marketing, you will make back 4 times that investment, which means you will have made $15 million off of $5 million. That is a good investment. Invest more in her. Give her better screenplays. Give her more.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think...
And give her this slot. Because next year, this slot is probably going to be just as dead as it was this year. Yeah. Release her after the, 3 weeks after, 4 weeks after a Disney movie. Mm-hmm. The last big Disney superhero movie. Unless there's some significant competition. But we see that Aladdin isn't getting wide distribution. It's essentially one house per 50 miles, it seems like. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah, you brought up Greta, and, the idea of, like, really talented actresses like Isabelle Huppert or Octavia Spencer getting the opportunity to play roles that are just kind of purely entertaining.
That's the thing. Huppert doesn't translate to American audiences.
That's true. You're right. It's not a perfect
Spencer has
analogy.
A story with us. She has The Shape of Water. She has The Help. And then she has all those other things we've seen her in. What was it? Hidden Figures we saw her in. So we're familiar with her, and we want to see her in a unique way.
Yeah.
At this current time.
I want to see her as a villain. Yeah.
I think we just want to see her more than anything. Like, no matter what. Like, if it was a serious role that was dramatic and heartbreaking, and she got to put on her best Michelle Williams, I think we would still be interested as audience members. Yeah. Now, maybe it wouldn't translate to that horror demographic, but it would probably still be able to pull in around 12. Manchester by the Sea numbers if you market it right. So, I think that this just speaks to our North American interest in Spencer as a performer. Yeah. And I'd like to see us double down on her and, like, give her these bigger roles and these juicier roles that have screenplays written for her that aren't shite.
Yes. I would completely agree on that. So yeah, to come back to your original question, why did I give this 2 stars but also a heart? It is purely for her. Like, maybe less as a movie, it is just good as a source for gifts. There are many gifts I could use for, various gestures that Ma has here.
Yes.
Many great scenes and facial expressions. I am just fine with watching her trying to relive the glory days she never had. That's all funny stuff. I did feel like it kind of had the right idea in mind to let us watch that.
Don't make me drink alone. Don't make me drink alone.
It's hilarious. And people... Were many people at your screening of Ma?
No, the way that I worked it in was a morning. I went to, like, one of the earliest show times that day. So that I could go do a bunch of stuff in the middle and then get back to the Dark Phoenix that evening.
Got it.
So I hemmed my day in with 2 totally shit films.
That's interesting.
But no, it was me, 2 other guys, and then 2 theater staff that watched it.
Quiet?
So,
okay.
Well, no, it was definitely loud.
Yeah. A good
The audience members I was with were very loud and enthusiastic, and that was probably the best part of the film.
Yeah. That was the same case for me. The audience was very responsive to it. People were laughing. I just wish that this had been, like, more disturbing in a way, considering what it is that it puts her through.
And by the end,
what it roots all this in.
The last 10 minutes first, 1:30? Like, it just doesn't feel even.
Yeah.
And I think that's because the main character we follow is not the main character of the film. Like, it's a weird thing where the film is about her, Octavia Spencer, but we don't follow her, and it's not about her story during the film. And I think that that's just a screenplay flaw.
Well, I would counter that maybe with something like Unfriended, which I think is also sort of a Revenge of the Bullied type film.
And good.
Except it is good.
So there's a major difference.
Well, I think that is good in different ways, but we also don't really follow the supernatural bullied who is coming back from the dead. We are very much with the people who are experiencing it, right? So I think I would disagree that there are ways...
I was thinking of the one where they're getting killed by external people on the dark web.
Oh, well, I was thinking of the first one in the franchise, not the sequel. Sequel was Unfriended Dark Web. I think the first one was just called Unfriended, where friends are in the group chat, somebody joins the group chat, and it turned, and it is the person who has been bullied, but we don't quite know, the mechanics of what exactly happened, who was culpable for it.
I wasn't quite sure that was actually true. I guess, in the first one. I didn't quite buy into it definitely being supernatural, so much as being a sleuth on the internet who is a murderer who wanted to fuck with a group of people.
Oh, that's scary.
So
it's very scary. It's a good movie too.
Yeah. Let's just, I guess, agree to hate this movie differently or dislike it differently,
and both be on board with Octavia Spencer.
Yes. Proof of concept complete. Let's get a great movie next spring, please.
Fingers crossed. Moving on.
I have not got that much room.
You've got a foot on that side.
That's
and I
not
literally am on a ledge. And I've got nowhere left to go.
The Souvenir.
That's right.
This is one of your favorite films of the year.
It is. I think it is my favorite movie of the year. I think I have...
Over an Elephant.
Yeah, I think I have, 3 to 5 other movies that I could be just fine with having in my number 2 spot. They're all kind of neck and neck, but I do think The Souvenir, directed by Joanna Hogg, is my favorite movie of the year. So that tells you how I feel about it.
Why?
I thought it was profoundly sensitive and deeply reflective. Reflective probably being the operative word.
It certainly is that.
Yeah, the movie itself did strike me as an act of reflection. This feels to me like the story of a relationship remembered, while the actors are doing a very good job of helping me feel like this relationship is playing out before my eyes for the first time.
Yeah, it's living.
Yeah, the texture and the structure of it implies to me that it's something being reflected on. I think you have to kind of be open to the fact that I knew going into this that this was to some extent autobiographical.
Mm-hmm. I had no idea.
Hadn't heard that.
I didn't know anything about the movie until after I watched the movie.
Yeah, I can't
stuff. I wanted to go in blind.
Yeah, I didn't know to what extent or
Did you know about the sequel?
No.
Okay.
But I'm very intrigued to see where this will go. But
probably wherever she went.
That would make sense. Yeah.
I think I saw Robert Pattinson is going to be their next main male lead. And I think that it's in the middle of filming right now, if I remember correctly.
He's got an eye for some decent projects.
And I don't think that it's actually going to, but I believe it is projected as releasing this year, which would just be insane.
Really? That's crazy.
That would be insane. I'm sure that it'll pull a Serenity and not, but I believe it's The Souvenir Part 2, I believe, is listed as a 2019 release.
This was a question I had.
Okay.
So, in A.O. Scott's review for the New York Times, it was a favorable review. Critics pick. He ended it with, "This is one of the saddest movies you could imagine, and it's an absolute joy to watch." To what extent do you find it to be particularly sad? And to what extent did you find it a joy to watch?
I think I disagree with him because I have a different subjective experience than he does as a viewer and as someone who enjoys characters. I tend to hate characters that don't exhibit agency or responsibility. That's just some things that I value in literature and film and life. I tend to like people that exhibit agency and don't like people that don't. just personally. And so when I was watching her continue to manipulate her mother, continue to make poor choices, which start in the very beginning when her friends tell her to ask for rent and she doesn't, and we're exposed to how weak she is as a person, how infantile she is based on the support structure around her, how little responsibility she takes for moving forward, that she wouldn't have even left the relationship if it wasn't for him killing himself through an overdose.
Yeah, you wonder where this relationship might have gone if he hadn't killed himself. Just how long she might have subjected herself to it.
No, I was never on her side enough to wonder those things. And that's just where I differ from Scott. But subjectively, as the viewer, I thought that it was a beautifully framed, beautifully lit, and the subtext of every scene, meaning the inanimate objects and the use of landscape and the use of lighting in that landscape or reflection, was absolutely stunning. I think that there's this opening or scene in the first third of the movie where they're having dinner in that area where the mirror is not yet shattered by him punching the wall. And the window is open on the left side, and he's sitting on the left side of the table. And he's directly in front of the window. So he doesn't cast a reflection, and he just appears in this kind of square of darkness in frame. And then she is reflected in the wall behind her, the mirror wall. She's also reflected in the window by the way that it's lit. And I thought that was a genius way of telling us that she's stuck in this reflected place that's all about her, kind of, and that he's in this well of darkness. Like, it's just visual storytelling at its pinnacle. And it's just about people that I don't find sympathetic or agreeable to any point where I'm interested in them. At the end of my personal review, I wrote that if she exhibits agency in part 2, it could be my favorite film of that year, if not a top 10 movie for me, because the filmmaking is incredible, and I hate the characters in this film, besides Aoki and Tilda.
Yeah, I did find myself wondering. I saw this at an AMC. You did too, right?
Same screening room, that
shit
screening room.
I would think so. I did find myself wondering why, or not why, but like, if this might have done even better just at art houses rather than in a chain, just because I'm trying to imagine like how many moviegoers are really going to have the patience for
how many people
this
walked
character. No walkouts, but I did hear quite a few like
groans,
heavy sighs.
Yeah.
I don't remember how long it is, but
it's about 2 hours.
It sure sounded like to them it was taking forever.
Dude, it did take forever. It really did. And if I didn't appreciate her ability to direct as much, it would have sucked to watch. But her ability to direct is just insane. And the performances are wonderful.
Yeah.
I just hate the characters.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Except for Aoki, who is a genius and hilarious. And I wish that he had all the scenes, but he only had one.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely didn't experience hatred. I guess I was just too kind of fascinated by the character to feel something as strong as hate. I mean, I was very intrigued by how
it's light hate. It's exhaustion. It's like I've been exhausted for so long that I'm starting to feel like I hate it. It's not like I really, like, viscerally hate it. It's just like, oh my god, you're still gonna be a child? You're still gonna pretend that that's a bruise on his arm? We're still doing this? I hate that you're doing this. Like, you know, like, you subjectively are hating the character's weaknesses. Not necessarily the film itself. But, like, they just keep making these choices where you're like, are you fucking kidding me?
I know.
Are we really doing this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just the difference.
You believe you were robbed. You believe that.
That was bad. Or not bad, but
we're gonna
frustrating.
do that? Like, we're gonna pretend this is, like, you know, it's just frustrating. Like, imagine being her mother. Like, good God, Tilda. Poor woman.
Yeah, she's very apologetic. Like, when the junkie shows up at her house and she is trying to throw him out, the whole time she's saying, I'm sorry. It's like, don't say you're sorry. Like,
kick him the fuck out.
Yeah, like, clap him over the head with something. Come on. It is frustrating, but again, like, I was just so connected to how the film itself seemed to, like, be reflecting on how she was sort of in denial about these things, how naive she was. Like, I felt like the film was cognizant of all of that versus just sort of, like, putting me through it. The film was sort of, like, owning up. Like, it feels like I think the character's name is Julie. I think it felt like one of Julie's memories. She was owning up to this.
And I do think that's interesting because we all certainly have our weaker selves in our pasts that did these things that were stupid and childish that we had to experience and learn from.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe that does have a huge, immense value to other people, or even to myself, just not at this moment. Mm-hmm. But it's just to watch this character for 2 hours not exhibit any level of growth at all. The only reason the relationship ends is suicide. That's the only reason. He commits suicide through drug use. It's the only reason it ends. God, I just wanted to wring her neck. Like, you know, and that might just be like the standard American way that we watch films is like, by the end, we expect any exhibited character growth.
Yeah, some kind of arc.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't always need that. Like, particularly in some Asian cinema, I don't think that we necessarily always see growth. But, God, you just wanted it here. And it's almost like a paternal need. Like, I need to see you be better.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a little funny to have thought to myself, like, I think this is my favorite movie of the year, and yet I kept thinking about, like, all the people I know and how much they would hate it. Like, it's the one that's going to be a little hard to recommend to people.
Well, that's good, though, because then you know it is your favorite. And there's a difference between, like, the best and your favorite.
Yeah, yeah. That's true.
It's kind of like Climax is my favorite. And it's like, how many people can I recommend this to? Well, none of my family members. So...
Yeah, that's the one I think I feel like just to diverge very quickly, I think that's at the top of my list of revisits, actually, at this time of year. To go back into a little more defenses down with, or open-minded to, I guess.
Yeah.
But separate conversation.
Maybe watch that after the music video that just came out.
That's right. More no way. Yeah. But, yeah. The Souvenir.
What do you think of Honor?
Loved her. I think
she is a stunning performer. Cannot wait for her body of work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tilda as the mother.
Perfect.
The small smirk up and then flat and then smirk up and then flat and then smirk up flat that she does with the sides of her lips near the end when she's coming down the stairs to explain the phone call about him being dead. Those are the little nuances that I think master actors and actresses have. And that's why Tilda is, to me, one of the best and most transformative actresses that works today.
Yeah, I would agree. I hadn't really, like, put any thought yet until this movie came out about, like, real favorite supporting performances, but I think it's pretty huge here. I mean, kind of relative to, like, to the screen time, you just feel like she's just playing kind of a critical role in the texture of the movie. Yeah, I would agree. Mother-daughter duo, pretty strong. They know what's up.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing.
It's insane.
Yeah. But yeah, I will be just cautious about who I recommend it to.
Yeah, kind of like Climax. Just a little bit of a different group.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed that part 2 comes out this year and we can finish our ride. I understand it's only a 2-parter, so.
That's crazy.
Hogg is definitely someone I need to dig more into because I'm very impressed by her as a director.
There we go. All right. We're making a little bit of a transition now from our new releases for the week to a bit of a Bob Fosse mini marathon, if you will.
The classics.
That's right. And this was prompted by your watching of the miniseries Fosse Verdon, which you kind of liked. Is that fair to say?
Episode 1 is tied with Climax for my number 1 of the year. I think I'm going to start having to Keith Ulick my list a little bit and have an episode of television and a film split for the same position.
So episode 1, that was the pinnacle of the season.
That is absolutely because it's all in reality and in the show downhill from there. I think we all know how Bob's life ends, and that
I don't.
It's a hard,
actually.
It's a hard ride toward it.
Yeah.
Well, you know that he died before.
I
he
do
got
that.
to make
I don't
more
know
movies.
The details. Yeah.
You just looked at his filmography. You know it's small life.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have 2 Fosse movies that we're talking about this week. We have Lenny as well as Cabaret. We're going to talk about Lenny first.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lenny Bruce.
How do you people really feel about doing it? Isn't that about the dirtiest thing we could do to each other?
I think last week you mentioned that you were not a huge Dustin Hoffman fan.
I'm not.
Just generally speaking.
I am still not a huge Dustin Hoffman fan.
How'd you feel about him in Lenny?
I didn't. I had moments where I was like, wow, Dustin Hoffman just made a great choice. Or, holy shit, this is a 6-minute take. Fucking hell, what a great performance.
Yeah.
And then it was like, God, Lenny's great. And then it's like, oh no, Lenny's Dustin Hoffman. So it's absolutely transformative, and I think that this is the pinnacle that I've personally seen of Hoffman. But contemporarily, in the modern day, in this version of reality now in 2019, I haven't seen films from him in the last 5 years or when I was growing up that I think make him the movie star that the previous generations got to experience in films like Lenny. Like, I just don't think that he's that guy now.
Yeah. I
think that he's kind of a reverse Sandler for me, where I think like Adam Sandler was this thing in the 90s, and now Sandler might be something different. Like, he's still making those movies for those audiences on Netflix with that production deal. But he's also in the Meyerowitz stories. He's also going to be in Waiting for the Barbarians, right?
Yeah.
He's also in Punch Drunk Love. Like, I think that Sandler is doing a slow transition towards, because he's such a deeply emotional comedian, that he can give these really raw performances. So I think that I would compare Sandler to Hoffman in kind of a reversal of, like, I think Hoffman started strong and I don't really like his work now. I think Sandler started funny and still can do that and is very good at producing that. But I think that as an actor, I'm only interested in his serious performances.
Yeah. It's kind of like what age you are, you might have a different Dustin Hoffman in mind.
Yes.
I think the first thing I ever probably saw him
Whereas
in
Redford,
was Meet the Parents.
I think Redford's just like straight for me.
Oh yeah, very stable. Yeah.
Just to kind of like give a medium of like what I'm trying to talk about.
That makes a lot of sense.
And I do like Hoffman and Meet the Parents. Great point. Like, I love Hoffman in those movies. He's hilarious.
Yeah.
I was thinking more of the serious stuff for Hoffman.
Yeah.
Also Meyerowitz stories.
Yeah. That
which
if you had
just
asked me
exhausted me.
10 years ago, if someone's mentioned Dustin Hoffman, I would have been like, oh yeah, Meet the Parents? And people would be like, what?
You mean Meet the Fockers, right?
Yeah. I think it was Meet the Fockers. You're right. He was Daddy Focker.
Yeah. Big Daddy F.
That's right. But yeah, I think I mostly liked him pretty well here as the titular Lenny Bruce. Did they get into Lenny Bruce much in the show or into the production of this one at all?
No. What we do spend some time on in the show is I believe that the comment is made, I think, by Margaret Qualley, who plays Anne Rankling. This isn't a story about Lenny Body. It's a story about you. Like, it's an extremely autobiographical piece, I think, that show, like, the womanizing that Lenny does is the absolute same that the show depicts, that Bob does. And kind of that fuck you to like, it's a different fuck you. Lenny's fuck you, I think, was a more sincere fuck you. axiomatically built-in ethics than I think Bob's is. But I think they both very much have like a systemic fuck you. I think Bob's is more to Hollywood, and Lenny's was more to the American institution, towards his belief in freedom of speech.
Right.
And freedom of expressing reality through speech, regardless of the verbs and nouns used to describe it. Yeah. I mean, I do think the back half of the movie, when that's what we're really honing in on, is his, belief in saying whatever he wants to say. Yeah, it's pretty persuasive. I mean, I was just wholly convinced the whole time as Dustin Hoffman melts, essentially.
Yeah. Particularly in some of the courtroom scenes. I mean, those are some of the more like kind of Oscar-y moments, but with I don't know, it was still a lot of kind of grit to it. So you thought
that was the Oscar-y moment?
I think so.
I personally think the Oscar-y moment is a particular scene where he's fucked up, and he only has one shoe, and he walks out of the curtain, and he says he says his funniest line. I can't remember what it was, but it's like, I'm the whatever, like I'm the clown is here, the jester's here, or something. And he stumbles up on stage in his one shoe, and he does this very like cringe-inducing speech, narration, oration, and it's all one take.
Yeah,
and he spins, and we see different parts of the diner. Every extra is doing their job perfectly. The lighting is perfect. The shadows are perfect. The spotlight is well centered. The band is in perfect timing. Dustin is rotating around. He sits with his back to the stage as he thinks and stumbles and stutters through words, and eventually it ends and he walks back through the curtain after like pointing out that there's pigs on this side, pigs on this side.
Yeah,
and it's just maybe it wasn't back then, but now that is what will get you your Oscar. That's your Birdman moment.
Yeah.
Right? Like that is it. Like that is like that didn't even feel like it was all written down. Like it felt like Dustin improv half of it.
Yeah.
Like it just God. That is that is I think what Fosse as a filmmaker does that makes us remember him as a filmmaker.
Yeah. That sense of sort of like exasperation really does sort of accrue over time as the cops keep showing up, and he's just so desperate to like get this point across. He's like, "Don't you see like what we're stifling by doing this?" I think that it is pretty compelling. And those long takes really work. I think particularly because of just kind of how fast the editing is, like just up until some of those, and then it kind of just comes to a halt for those long takes, and you're just with Lenny upstage, or in the audience. Maybe that's the wrong way to put it.
Well, what do you think about? I think it's earlier in the movie, but there's this scene where he's like doing a routine, and then we cut away to the relationship. They go to like a nightclub. They get loaded. Then they leave. They get in the car crash. And then the car crash cuts right back to the performance.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, oh, yeah, that joke he just said in this car crash for, like, the same thing.
Yeah.
And, like, that's just, like, wow. Like, wow. That was a moment where I was just kind of, like, floored. Like, filmmaking can sometimes do things that are just insane.
Yeah. I mean, the tone becomes kind of complicated when you're oscillating so quickly between the comedy on stage and the horror of whatever might be going on off stage.
Or is most certainly going on.
Yeah.
In his life, particularly.
Yeah. And then how the interviews, this is sort of framed as if it were, a documentary in the making or something like that, can sort of sometimes reinforce the tragedy of it. And then at other times sort of like undercut the seriousness. Like that's what I kept almost kind of laughing at, which, that's what's sort of complicated about it is like I think Honey is her name, right? Honey Bruce was his wife's name, or her nickname at least. You know, she's talking about some awful things that happened, but, you know, her dog's in her lap as she's talking about it, and Fosse's keeping the dog in the frame, and she's, you know, eating chips. It's always kind
she's maybe got a smile on her lips.
Yeah, it's kind of undercutting the seriousness of it. Even while I feel it being very serious, it's like Fosse's recognizes that Lenny Bruce might not want this to be particularly pitying or something like that.
Okay. So I think there's an interesting dichotomy that happens in this movie that I didn't actually realize until well after I'd finished it, like days after I'd finished it, like probably 2 days ago, maybe yesterday. I'm staying up late, so I don't know exactly when I'm realizing stuff, but I realized that Honey went to jail, and Lenny almost kept going to jail, but never really went. And she was reformed by the system, and Lenny never was. And I wonder exactly what Fosse thought about that. Because he definitely does depict it. And it's, you know, whatever Honey's life is now, it's still a life. Yeah. And Lenny doesn't have one of those. And so I just find myself wondering, like, what does Bobby think about that? Especially knowing how, personally, how he came to die, and having my own questions about if he thought it was worth it. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Do you find it more sympathetic to one character over the other, Honey versus Lenny, or is it
no? I think it's definitely even. Like I think that they each have their points, and that's I think the torturous part. Like, God, would Lenny even be Lenny if Lenny had lived? That's the other thing. You know, like sometimes people aren't people anymore after they live. Like in Rocket Man last week, when I heard everybody shouting that don't quit drugs, you're gonna suck now. You know, like it's kind of the same thing. Like, if you do quit drugs and make your life better, are you still gonna be Lenny? Would you rather have been Lenny, or continue to be a different remembered version of him? Yeah, is kind of the question. And I think that Fosse was grappling with that. Yeah, perhaps in this film.
Yeah. The ending did feel kind of abrupt, not in a bad way. I just mean that as in a descriptive way, in a way that it does sort of like leave you wondering, like, what his career would have gone on to have looked like.
Yeah.
Which I think is good. You know, you want an ending that leads you to reflect.
I mean, in contemporary culture, you know, we've got 9 different versions of him now. Got Hoffman's version. We've got Mrs. Maisel's version. We've got quite a few other TV shows depicting him or mentioning him in different ways. Like, he lives in spirit in so many different ways. And was that more important to the one that we got to now than living? Yeah. Was that message that he was conveying more important than actually being alive?
Yeah. It is. It's a tough ending for sure. But I really like the movie.
I do too.
No doubt. Good Fosse.
Meine Damen und Herren, Mesdames et Messieurs, Ladies und Gentlemen, Fräulein Sally Bowles!
In case that wasn't clear, we're going to talk about Cabaret next.
Oh, it's absolutely divine, darling.
I take it you liked it.
I do like this movie. I have maybe the most criticism of Fosse that I've exhibited, but I still like the picture. I just don't know that the timing in the middle lined up correctly.
In the middle of the movie?
Yeah. Yeah, like I don't quite know that those musical numbers worked, or that they worked in the way that they were constructed, but I think that the opening and the ending absolutely accomplished the goal of making the viewer feel things that are complex and have more questions than answers.
Yeah. I think I'm mostly on the same wavelength. There were things about it I loved. The numbers themselves being terrific.
How about some of the camera work?
Great.
Right.
And again, some of the editing that we kind of see in Lenny here, very effective. I think
he's got a very good sense of musicality to his entire filmmaking process.
Yeah. Just a satisfying kind of rhythm to the cutting. Mostly in the club is what kind of when I remember those, quick cuts from face to face of patrons, right? Which sometimes feels like it's almost sort of playing up like their sort of monstrousness. Like, maybe it's just partly that you can't help but also be, bringing in what is going on outside onto those faces. But I don't know that I found some of that editing all that sympathetic of the patrons of the cabaret.
Oh, no, I think the patrons are the ones who are being the most criticized.
Yeah.
Because the patrons are German.
Yeah.
During the Nazi uprising. And
right.
I think, once again, that dichotomy between the older faces that clearly are not liking the direction of the country and the younger faces, particularly there's that they go on that trip, right?
Yeah.
Where there's the young men dressed in Nazi uniforms who we don't see their armband until like 3/4 of the way through the song, and they're the perfect German by Nazi standards. Blonde hair, right? I don't know if they had blue eyes, but I could definitely tell they had blonde hair.
Yeah.
And they were singing about this new version of young Germany and how it's my Germany, and essentially the Hitler Youth, is what we're seeing on screen. And these old faces, just looking like they're looking in despise at this message, I think communicated a very complex set of ideas that the whole film communicates about. Not just Nazis or Germany at this point in time, but about broader culture and how our bad ideas look.
Yeah, I think I found all that super compelling, and I think the editing is so effective in sort of making all that feel just so fraught. That especially even at that farm scene, I think we're getting those cuts from faces to faces as they're singing. Like you just
some are in joy, singing along, and some are in despair.
It's it's disturbing. And then at the same time, we have this story of Sally, Liza Minnelli's character, and I think I like that equally as much. I just kept kind of expecting or wanting those two sort of parallel things that we're tracking to come together in a more purposeful way.
What two things specifically?
Well, I guess it's kind of like a foreground and background thing, where I'm thinking about how Fosse's, sort of bringing to our attention that the Nazi party is coming to prominence in the background, while he's primarily focused on this relationship between Sally and Brian, and eventually this third character, which I do like that part quite a bit.
And arguably the fourth character.
True. Yeah, and that's probably where they kind of touched the most, is this other character. I think so. Yeah, who wants to...
When this guy who's pretending to be a German embraces being a Jew so he can get married to his Jewish fiancée. And then Brian has to, or decides to leave. And so, the thing going on there the whole time, right, is that Sally's willing to do anything to become famous, right?
A movie star.
Or to get this version of winning, right? And I think that's what we're seeing in that Nazi thing. Like these kids that are young have this bad idea, and I think that Liza Minnelli might have this bad idea that she's willing to do anything for it, hustle anything for it. It's not that being a movie star is a bad idea, but it's the way that she's thinking about it that might be the bad idea. Like what she's willing to do for it that might be bad. And then Brian kind of loses himself in that. And then that other character, was it Martin?
That sounds right. Yeah. We'll call him Martin. I think that is right.
Right. He becomes entangled with both of them. And then he abandons that German identity that's kind of twisting itself into this weird menagerie of fuck up in this.
Very much so. Yeah.
Back to being, what is a very heteronormative narrative of good, but still, he embraces his true self and abandons these more sinful ideas in this screenplay with these characters.
Yeah.
And I think that enmeshing with those two is what kind of comes to free up Brian and allows him to go back. Because in Germany, under Nazi rule, he would also be killed for being gay. So then there's that other thing where it's like, well, the only person who can stay in Germany is this con artist who wants to be a movie star, not because she appreciates the art or because she means what she says when she says it about who her favorite film star is, but because she just wants the attention and the wealth.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, so the attention and the wealth are the bad idea that this young girl has. What do these German youths have? What's their bad idea? Wealth, power? Okay. So that's where I get the mapping at, where he's making the same point of like there's a bad idea that the youth can have about acquiring power.
Yeah, I think I see what you're getting. I mean, I'm nervous about like not nervous, but I don't know. I mean, that does seem like
it's not as clean as I'm saying it.
Yeah,
but I'm saying it as well as I can say it in this moment.
Yeah. It's maybe that like I feel the narrative being in part about Sally as this very sort of vivacious, carefree dancer,
irresponsible.
Yeah.
Hustler,
playing the role of sort of enabling this more uptight, squarish guy to sort of find himself and loosen up in a way. You think about that scene underneath the train, right, where she helps him, or is saying, you gotta scream when the train comes by. And she almost like startles herself by how loud she screams, and then he does it. It's so like I like that stuff, and I think it comes a little close to like that manic pixie dream girl cliche in a way, but I think it does kind of narrowly avoid it because
she is so grounded.
Because she's just so good, and the relationship is sort of unconventional enough that it just still feels unique. So maybe it's just that I was like kind of honing in on the nature of that relationship.
Let me bear in on that. So you think she helped Brian find himself?
That's kind of. I should clarify. I think I maybe suspected that's what this movie was about. I don't know that in hindsight that was actually a right reading or not. But that's maybe why I was struggling.
I think my hunch is that she also helped him, but in a different way, and not so much help as perhaps something that he needed at the time, but isn't actually good for him, which was to lose himself. I got the general sense that he lost himself in her orbit, if you will. He's like, I don't sleep with girls. I've done it 3 times. It was a disaster every time. I don't like girls. And then he starts to, and everything goes to shit. We see him drinking continuously to be around her and around Martin. And then he started to lighten up when he began to feel the romantic intrigue of Martin. So to me, it was like she made him lose himself. And then it was kind of...
You think she was like a negative influence on him?
Or a necessary negative, perhaps, is another way of reading that, right? Like, that's another part of it, is sometimes... I think all youth have to go through different versions of negativity and come out the other side. And so I think that's that interesting part that Liza's correlation to this Nazi party in the background has, is sometimes we have to go through these things to actually have experienced them, so that we actually are doing what we're doing for a reason. Because if we don't do what we do for a reason, then eventually someone's not going to understand why you do it that way, and then they're going to make a really bad mistake.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a kid learning what's hot, and you say, never touch the curling iron, touch this thing that's hot, and they're like, ow! Yeah. And then you go, the curling iron's way worse, don't touch it. And then they maybe don't. It's something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I see it. I guess if Minnelli's character was in some way supposed to represent like what people should be paying attention to or experiencing, so they don't overlook its like dangerousness. Like I wish that she had maybe then been like more dangerous or kind of malicious. Like I mean, I found her so like sort of
charming,
effervescent. Yeah. I mean,
and that's because she is so playful and
yeah.
Perhaps aloof of her own negativity. And for some reason, that's what works for me. Whereas Honor Swinton did not seem that like she seemed too smart to be that dumb.
Yeah. Anything related to the show that really informed the viewing, or did they dig into this one much?
The gorilla suit was a particular like moment in the show where Gwen went to go get it, and what happened while she was gone becomes a little bit interesting. Also, just how every time it doesn't show that Gwen has anything to do with the choreography in the title credits of these movies, and then you know that she did. That kind of informs like just the. I don't mean to give the wrong impression, but Michelle Williams does go quite big in her depiction of Gwen. But seeing how little credit she gets on these pictures shows like how right she was to feel the way that she was feeling that whole time. And like, yeah, the show deserves its own separate thing, but it definitely does inform an understanding of each of these films as far as what was going on in their relationship behind the scenes and their relationship with their daughter at that time. Whether or not Gwen's sister had died yet, whether or not Bob's best friend had died yet, those types of things.
You mean like was he like hesitant to give credit to her? Is that what you're saying?
He always needed her help, and then she never gets any credit.
Got it, yeah.
But he's always asking for her help. As a collaborator, as his equal, and then all the women that he's having these affairs with, he never treats as equals.
Yeah, so if you look on like IMDb or even in the credit sequences, will you see her name or no? I didn't even look.
I didn't see her name.
So sometimes she's just literally left off.
Yeah,
got it.
But then in the show, you see like she's the one that comes up with this trick for this, or she's the one that makes sure that like those chair scenes work with Liza. When they're doing the bike thing. Like, like she's just crucial to some of this stuff.
I mean, those are really the highlights for me. Are some of the numbers.
So you had a problem with the MC?
Oh no! I meant that only in a
cheeky way.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean,
I thought that he was the underline to the punctuation mark.
Yeah, I completely agree. I found him a little creepy. That's all I meant by that, is that I would be a little nervous to get too close to him in that cabaret. But I think that actor's awesome.
Yeah.
I think
the role was very, very good too.
Oh yeah,
like just the way that it was written, how it was edited in.
Yeah. I mean, I do really like how that kind of pushes the narrative along, is that we cut back to these sequences and then they're each sort of associated with whatever else we're seeing outside of the club.
What do you think about the bookended mirror?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I thought that with all this in the background about the Nazi Party's rise, I guess I thought of this sort of being like an indictment of complacency and of overlooking sort of the danger that can be right in front of you. So the idea of this mirror being right in front of you to prompt you to look at yourself or look at whatever's being reflected right in front of you, I guess is sort of the idea I was tracking on. What about you?
If I remember correctly, the first mirror, eventually our MC comes into frame, but before that it's just kind of the audience, and the audience has no definite depiction of being any type of a person, just kind of just the German populace en masse, no particular one way or the other, like no Nazi party, no communist party, none of that stuff, right? And then at the end, we kind of get a fractured heart symbol.
Oh.
And there's a Nazi on one side, and then on the other side where there's that fracture, there's a Nazi who you can't see is a Nazi, and then there's a person.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a very interesting visual motif if it was on purpose to show that, like, these people might not really be Nazis so much as just have passively become them by sitting in the audience too long.
Yeah. They've been sort of just inundated, maybe. Yeah.
And I mean, that idea that our I want to say his name is Martin, but our third party to this emotional roller coaster along Cabaret, right? He says that the reason that Nazis are fine is because it's going to get rid of communists, and then we'll get rid of the Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
And there is something very sincere, I think, about maybe how truthful that could have been for some Germans at that point in time. That they thought that communism was a bigger threat than
one
Nazism.
problem will take care of another.
Yeah, that let's use nationalism to get rid of communism, and then we'll get rid of nationalism. Yeah.
It does sort of sting when I think Brian says to Martin at that village or farm, something like, you still think you can control him?
Yeah.
Like, that does seem to be like what the movies say. It's like, folks, don't you think we ought to be a little more concerned here? And that's why I think the mirror idea was sort of like, sort of holding it up to you, like, as an audience, like, just look at yourself, make sure, you are, actively aware of what's around you, versus these people who are sort of, so distracted by the, song and dance in front of them that they'll follow whatever wave comes. So yeah, it's a weird sort of blend of marvelousness, right, as Sally would say, and some pretty disturbing stuff, which I do think totally makes it pretty compelling.
Yeah, it's marvelously divine and then terror.
yeah, no doubt. I would. I think I saw that when I was realizing to myself that I really hadn't seen Liza Minnelli in anything. I realized that she was in Scorsese's musical, which I've never seen, New York, New York.
I've never seen that.
Made me very interested in now watching New York, New York.
Yes,
because she is a ton of fun to watch.
Yes. That seems like a natural ending point to this one.
There we go.
We'll see you next week, folks, and I'll see you next week, Michael.
Take care.
Run! Go! Get to the chopper!
We have to go.
I'm coming with you.
That was brilliant.
You're the best and we love you!
You know what that means, right? Another one in the can.